Hi, and welcome to this knitting podcast. I am Vanilla, and I'm the woman behind Simply Vanilla Stitching, and I'm very glad that you are joining me right here, right now. You've come to this little corner of the internet that is actually becoming quite large of knitting podcasters, and I hope you enjoy yourself. I don't know if you can hear the children screaming outside. I live in an apartment complex and there are children everywhere, so sometimes they scream. I don't really know if you can hear them. I hope not. I hope they're going to be quiet anyway. I have the window open because it's warm, very warm. Anyway, I digress. This is my knitting podcast. It is a journey that I'm bringing you guys on. So the journey consists of me recently graduated from university, and I'm now job seeking and I'm trying to get a job. And until I get a job, while I'm unemployed, I live on quite a tight budget. I don't have an awful lot of money. And that also means that I don't have any money whatsoever to spend on yarn. And I am a knitter, I am a crafter, and I use yarn, but I don't have the money. So this knitting podcast is all about using my stash and showing you guys the projects that I create with the stash. My stash mainly consists of acrylic yarns. I go over all of that in the first episode. And every podcast episode, I update you guys on how it's going to get rid of the stash and also what patterns I've been creating and what patterns I'm really eyeing. So that's the knitting podcast. That's the Simply Vanilla knitting podcast. Or the Simply Vanilla Stitching knitting podcast. Oh me, oh my. Amazing. So I'm coming to you from sunny, pretty warm Denmark. It's usually cloudy when I record an episode, but today, all of a sudden, it's sunny. It was supposed to be cloudy. Like, I'm wearing jeans, like long pants, because it was supposed to be cloudy, but it's actually pretty sunny, and it's also quite warm. That's why the window is open, because I want to be able to breathe in here. And that's very hard if the window is closed. As I said, this is a knitting podcast, if you've not been here before. But I think today might be a little bit more of a nitty chatty video. And oh my lord, this hair. I'm gonna chop it off soon. This is gonna be more of like a nitty chatty episode. And I was actually considering, and I want you guys to just think about that for the rest of this episode, or just a few seconds. You can just comment right away. Would you be like interested in every other episode of this knitting podcast to be a bit more of a nitty chatty version? Because I've come to realize now that since the last time I recorded until now, I've obviously done some progress, but it's not like been a lot. And I'm feeling quite pressured to speed through projects that I'm actually kind of losing motivation to finish them, if that makes sense. So actually, I don't really know what I'm asking you guys, because just by saying this out loud, I'm making a decision by myself. So this episode is gonna be a nitty chatty. I'm obviously gonna talk about knitting because it is the knitting podcast. But I'm not gonna go through the whole works in progress, finished objects, all of that jazz. You're gonna have to wait for that. You're gonna have to wait for the next episode to get that. So nitty chatty today, actual knitting podcast next time, a nitty chatty time after that, and then so on and so forth. I think you get the point. So actually, you don't have to make a decision if that's okay with you, because that's how it's gonna be. Because I don't want to lose motivation to knit when I've actually started this whole thing. So that was a silly way to start this. I want to say very many, oh, there we are again. I want to say thanks a lot for joining me, and I also want to say very big thanks. I also want to say a big thank you to everyone who subscribed, everyone who liked, everyone who commented. It really warms my heart so much to see all of the comments. You guys are such lovely individuals. I really enjoy it, so thank you very much, and please continue if you have something nice to say, but it really warms my heart and it makes me believe in myself so much, so thank you. Before I just continue talking here with my hands going wild, because I'm a handy speaker. I don't know how to say that. I'm gonna get my knitting, because this is a nitty chatty video, and instead of just chatting, I'm also gonna be knitting. So I am working on a new cardigan. I'm gonna show you more in the next episode, don't worry. I'm working on the Sea of Love cardigan by Filcolana. I'm working in this very, I want to say almost burgundy purpley red. It looks very much like the picture of the Sea of Love. I'll insert one, obviously. It's really nice. The pattern is knit bottom up, so I'm starting with the bottom ribbing, and I need about 10 centimeters. So I have quite a bit to get going. I'll try to look into the camera, but obviously sometimes I'll need to see what I'm doing on my knitting. I'm pretty good at not looking at my knitting while I knit, I want to say, but obviously sometimes I have to just check that everything is going well. I hope that the changes of lighting doesn't bother you guys too much. I could just tell that it got quite dark in here. I think the sun just went behind like one of the only clouds that are probably out there, but I hope it's gonna be okay. It's not dark. So, right. So I have a few topics for the day. I think I have like 2 topics. The first one is about acrylic yarn, because this entire podcast is basically built on like getting rid of stash, which is primarily acrylic yarn for me, because this was what I bought when I first got into knitting and crocheting, and haven't really used since, because then I got into natural fibers and I just enjoy working with that more than I did with acrylic. So I have a lot of it, and I saw this morning actually that Breeze Knits posted a Knitty Chatty video like a week ago maybe, where she actually talked about acrylic yarn, and I was like, yeah girl, you go. It was really like, I found it so inspiring that finally another young podcaster went out there and was like, acrylic yarn is okay, you guys, like, use it. If you have it, use it. It really made me happy, because I think that a lot of the podcasters that are out there these days are what I probably define as, not to shame anyone, are like a bit of yarn snobs. Like, they know what they want in yarn, and that's good. Don't get me wrong, like, I know what I want to, and I'm not blaming anyone for wanting natural fibers and not wanting to work with acrylic yarns. Trust me, I don't blame anyone for it. But there has become this tendency that acrylic yarn is just a no-no. Like everything, like every petite knit design, no, don't knit it in acrylic. Acrylic is bad for you. Acrylic is bad for the environment. And acrylic is, it's all negative about acrylic. And obviously, I get it. Acrylic is not like the best thing for the environment. And I see why you should use... There's a train coming. I should probably close the window, shouldn't I? Yeah, I closed the window. So I'll just have to boil a bit in here. No, but as I was saying, like, I get that acrylic yarn is not like the best thing in the world for the environment or for basically anything, but it's worth noting that it's very budget friendly. Like you, as a beginner knitter, and you don't want to spend like a lot of money on it, then it's very good for it. It's a very nice option for you. And there's a lot of different acrylic. Like you can get natural fibers with acrylic in it, which makes it a lot cheaper to purchase. And also there's a lot of nice acrylic out there. Like we shouldn't be all like painting it all black and white, like either acrylic is bad or good, because that's obviously not the case. You can find bad acrylic and you can find decent acrylic. Of course, all of these environmental factors are not going to go away just because it's a nice quality acrylic. But as Bree from Bree's Knit, I think Bree is her name. Honestly, I'm not quite sure at this very moment. But the host from Bree's Knits, I think she's called Bree. I couldn't say. No, but as she so very nicely said, I have it written down right here in my notes. She said that there are people taking like a 3-minute plane ride, like a 3-minute flight, to avoid a bit of traffic. So why would we blame anyone for purchasing acrylic yarn because they can't afford all of the natural fibers? And a very nice comment for that, and also Bree's own like wording was like, why are we sitting here and almost defending using acrylic yarn? Like that is our own, like that is, if that's what we want to do, then why not just do it? Why do we have to like almost be embarrassed about it? Like obviously for me, the embarrassment of using acrylic yarns, there we go again. The embarrassment in using acrylic yarn is that I'm very aware that acrylic yarn is, it's plastic. I can feel it being plastic when I knit with it. Like I'm aware how wool and natural fibers en masse feels like to knit with. So I'm aware when I'm knitting with acrylic because it feels differently and it feels very differently to wear. Like it's not my favorite thing ever. And I feel almost embarrassed having to knit with acrylic yarn because I don't have the money for it. So for me it's like an insecurity about money, that I am on a very tight budget and I don't feel very confident saying that out loud. Or it's not like I'm gonna cry about it, but obviously it gives me a little bit of embarrassment to say that I don't have the money to keep up with this very expensive hobby if I have to go out there and purchase all of this very fancy and nice yarn. So I'll have a bit of coffee. I closed the window and I can already tell it's like almost boiling in here. I might have to take off my pants. Now you are warned. Obviously you can't see down there, but I think it would be very nice for my legs. We'll see how long I keep. I have coffee with me again because, like I said last time, I learned how terrible it is to be speaking for like 1.5 hours without anything to drink. Once again, my husband is at home. I screwed something up right here. I'm just going back, sorry. That's why I have to look down a few times. Screwed up. My husband is downstairs. He is watching Bella playing some game, Elden Ring. That was a total tangent. I don't know how I went there. We were talking about acrylic yarns and here I am talking about my husband playing a PlayStation game. That's me. No, okay, so what I was gonna say now was that a lot of the acrylic yarns that I have, to just stick with the acrylic, let's just rewind. One of the things that I am most concerned about using acrylic yarns is that some acrylic yarns has been known to have harmful chemicals and substances in them, so that when you wear them next to skin for a longer period of time, then your skin can actually absorb these chemicals and substances and whatnot. And obviously that's not very ideal. And I don't know how I want to continue that sentence, but obviously that's one of the things that acrylic yarn is known for. But some acrylic yarn, at least in Denmark, I'm obviously not sure anywhere else in the world because I live here, we have this mark that's called the eco mark. Basically, it's like a 100 standard mark, which means that it has been tested for any harmful substances and it has passed that test, so there's no harmful substances in it. Obviously that does not take away the environmental factors or anything else, but it does mean that you knitting with it or wearing it is not any worse than, for example, wool or any other natural fiber. And that's pretty good to know that. But yeah, like, what's your opinion on acrylic yarn? I know that acrylic yarn is really something that can divide people. Like, some people swear they hate it, like they wanna, like they probably never knit again rather than knit with acrylic yarn. And then there are people like us, other people that are like, acrylic yarn is okay, like it's not my favorite, but I enjoy it. And then there are other people that might even swear by acrylic yarn. I don't know. I think I'm in the middle, like it's not my favorite, but right now it's what I have. And I am a lot more pleased to knit with acrylic yarn because I have it and I can afford it, rather than not knit at all. So that's pretty good. Yeah, but you know, let me know. Maybe we can have like a very nice professional debate about it. I want to say, don't go crazy over each other. We're all entitled to have our own opinions. Did you hear that? That was my husband going hi to my dog. Yeah. No, so I think that was like the hard debate topic that I was going to cover. I don't have a lot of opinion on like acrylic yarn, environmental factors. As I said, I haven't really looked into it. I know that there are a lot of different things with it, primarily because it's made of oil and plastic and everything like that, which obviously is not very environmentally friendly. But if you're interested, I can most definitely look into it. I can do a whole scientific research kind of thing about it. I am educated in that area, so I am able to do that. And then we can try to see how bad acrylic actually is. But I'm definitely not going to spend time doing that if you guys are like, I don't give a shit about acrylic yarn and its impact on the environment. So you can let me know. So the next topic that I wrote down I was going to talk to you about was actually something I said in my last episode that I was going to dedicate an entire episode for. And I think that this is a great time to do it because it's very early on in my journey, and it's a good way to also kind of introduce myself without, you know, going over the things that we went over in the last episode with age and what I do and stuff like that, but a bit more in like the past and how I got to where I am. So I'm going to talk a bit about my knitting journey. I know I don't want to say it's cringe-worthy, but it's definitely like something you have to do as a knitting podcaster, right? Like you have to say like, oh, I knit it for so many years and now I'm here and this is what I've done and everything like that. I feel like it's something you have to do when you have a knitting podcast. Like you just have to come about like what made you, what got you into knitting, what your favorite project was or something like that. So I'm also going to do that. So I have notes. As I have stated multiple times, acrylic yarn is pretty good for beginner knitters or crocheters, and that is why I have so much of it. When I started crocheting or knitting back in the time, I purchased so much acrylic yarn because that's what I could afford. I didn't have a large budget or anything. I've not really had that. Oh no, I've made a mistake. So where was I? Nevertheless, I purchased a lot of acrylic when I was younger, when I just started out crocheting, and I haven't really used all of it. I've used a bit of it, quite a lot of it actually, and some I used and then unraveled and just kept in my stash. Now, if I look over here to my left, maybe you're right, I don't know. It's because all of my yarn is in this IKEA container. I don't know what it's called. It's in there, so. If I look over there, that's why. No, but starting off from the very beginning, like I've always been quite a crafty kid, like I've always been a creative kid. I was never the sporty type. I was more like the I want to sit here and I want to paint after numbers kind of kid, and I wanted to do that until I was like 14 or something. I've always been very crafty. Like I've always been sewing, not nice pieces, no garments or anything, but just like sewing pillowcases and weird figures, and or no, it's not called figures in English, like it's called like dolls, like stuff like that. Always done that. I've done a lot of origami, like the paper folding. I've done a lot of that. There was also something called 3D paper sculptures, where you like made these teeny tiny triangles out of paper, like colored paper, and then you put them all together into like almost amigurumi kind of figures. I'll insert a picture of some because I still think it's a thing. But I did that quite a lot. I also did some newspaper weaving, like where you would roll up newspaper and then weave with it, like if it was like tree branches. I've done a lot of that. And obviously, in like as per usual, all of these knitting podcasters, I was taught how to knit when I was in like middle school, but it didn't really stick with me that much. But then in 2016, I recall that I was like, I want to start crocheting, like I want to try crocheting. So my mother and I, we went down, we got some yarn and we got a crochet hook, and I crocheted a scarf. I spent a lot of time crocheting that scarf. It was with the gray yarn that I showed you guys the first episode, and also last time, the one that I made the Sunday morning shawl out of. So that's many years ago. But I learned how to crochet, and I did that for like the entire 2016. I think it was probably around like fall in 2016, so it really wasn't that long in 2016. I also made some amigurumi crochet figure, like dolls kind of things. I obviously wasn't like as talented. I didn't really understand like the whole, I want to say, science behind crochet needle sizes and yarn size or yarn weight. I don't want to say it's a science, but then again, I didn't understand. Like I was just trying, and if it looked good, then I kept going with it, and that was great. So in 2017, I moved away from my parents. So I moved out. I moved to the city that I now live in to study at the university. It's so warm in here. It's terrible. No, but I moved here to go to university, and I continued crocheting. I crocheted some cushion covers that I talked about. I crocheted different things. I also think I crocheted some pot holders. I don't know. I crocheted quite a few random things, and then I started crocheting doilies, and I'll just show you some because I have them like right here. So I'll just find some. I also had some that was not done, and you can obviously tell like this one still has stitch markers in them. But like I started crocheting these teeny tiny doilies. They're very cute and I really enjoy it. I think they're very pretty. I really do. And they're obviously made with this very like lace yarn. And I've made so many of these. Like so many. They're so satisfying to do because you're just creating this little teeny tiny piece of art. Very pretty. I really enjoy them. I'm gonna put it here so we can all just appreciate it. I made a lot of those, but then I got to a point where I was like, I want to craft something I can use. Like the doilies are pretty, but can't really use them for I'm sorry, I was just about to say a word there. Can't really use them for anything. And also because, oh, I'm just gonna show you again. So much easier. Like this is like 3-dimensional, so it has bubbles sticking out of it and stuff. So I can't even place like, I can't even use it as a coaster or anything. Or I could, but that would be a shame. So I really didn't know like what I was gonna do, and I tried knitting. Obviously, as I said before, I tried crocheting garments, but it didn't really turn out that great, and all of the tutorials I found on it was on knitting. So I told my mother, I wanna knit. And she bought me 2 sets of circular needles, and she bought me a lot of cotton yarn, which I still have. Then she taught me to do knitting and purling, and then she handed me over one of these little like dishcloth books where it has all of these different patterns for beginners. And she was like, when you've made 10 of those, we can talk about it. We can talk more. Like, just start with this. And I was like, I don't want to start doing dishcloths. I want to do like garments. I want to do fancy stuff. And my mother was like, you just do knitting and purling for a while, and we'll see how it goes. And looking back at it, I really understand why. Like, she was all over the place, like, oh, we're gonna have to learn her how to do things, and then she can't be able to do it, and then she'll lose interest, and then I've spent a lot of time teaching her to do stuff. But joke's on her, I kept with it. That was in 2017. I kept with it since then. No, wait. I only started knitting in 2019. 2017. How did we get into knitting? Right, that was the doily. It's because I continued making doilies. I have it right here. So in 17 and in 18, I really just made doilies and cushion covers and stuff like that. Like, I don't want to say useless stuff, but not anything that I felt like I got anything out of making. And then in 2019, I was like, Mom, I wanted to learn how to knit. And then all of that dishcloth thing happened. It was fine. Also in 2019, I was, and it's gonna get crazy now. I was diagnosed with cancer. Obviously, it was not in a bad state. It was very early on, so I was really lucky. Like I didn't have to go through a lot of therapy or like a lot of treatment for it. It just, like, I was just sedentary for a few weeks, and then everything was good. Like, I had an operation, and they were like, we're just gonna check up on you, and everything went fine. So I was very lucky, but I was sedentary for a few weeks. Like, I was not allowed to move out of my bed. Like, I could sit up and I could watch TV, but I was not allowed to go grocery shopping. I was not allowed to go down the stairs from my apartment. It was terrible. And in that time, I thought to myself, I'm done knitting dishcloths. I'm gonna knit a garment. So I tried with using acrylic yarn, and it really, like, it didn't turn out well. I didn't understand. I didn't know what gauge was at the time. Like, I had just knit it with like the yarn and the needles that my mother had purchased me, so I didn't understand what gauge was. So I just I just used some yarn and I cast it on using some needles that I had, like one of those 2 needles, and obviously it did not go well. Let's put it like that, it did not go well. But staying at home for those weeks really made me realize how much I enjoy knitting. I've previously been very active. I was very much into fitness, strength training, and being sedentary. That obviously meant that I couldn't do those things, and that was very hard on me. Like that was, at the time being, that was probably like my biggest thing in life. Like that was training. So I used knitting sort of like to combat that, and I haven't stopped since. Sounds terrible to say it like that, but yeah, I think that's it for 2019. Right, so like this whole Cancer thing, I think it's kind of freaky because I've heard multiple knitting podcasters. I know that Night Sky Knitting, and also Knit with Madeline, I think her name is, they've also diagnosed with cancer. And I think it's scary how so many young people are diagnosed with cancer. Very happy that the treatments are so good that we are now all still here. Unfortunately, there are some that are not, but luckily it's getting better. But I think it's it's quite concerning thinking about how many of us has actually undergone cancer treatment. It's very terrifying, actually. I'm not all about it. Anyway, I digress. So in 2020, we're rushing this. Like, we started in 2016, now we're 2020. And I am still knitting, but my grandmother, my father's mother, she fell ill. She fell ill. She had a terrible accident. She was a very well-functioning old lady. She did everything by herself. She knit a lot. I have so many pairs of knitted socks from her. She's knit me so many blankets that you are probably seeing on Instagram if you follow me there. She has knit me so many things. And she was a professional knitter. She was very good friends with people at yarn shops, and she was knitting up all of these garments for them, being paid for it. She was she was very good at knitting, let's put it like that. But unfortunately she fell ill, terrible accident, ended up in a healthcare center. She's still alive, thank God, but she is now unable to use the entire left side of her body, so she can't knit. And I had started knitting, and then my father's brother, so my uncle, he called me and he was like, do you want to inherit your grandmother's knitting needles? And at the time I was like, yeah, I can do that. That doesn't sound so bad. And I'm laughing now, and I'm going to show you why I'm laughing. Hold on. I think I'm somewhat back in the shot now. So this is why I was laughing, because I wanted to inherit my grandmother's knitting needles, and I did not know what that meant. But this basket right here, I'm gonna drop my own knitting now. This basket right here is full of knitting needles. Like, it's full. There's also some crochet hooks in there, but primarily it's just knitting needles. There was a system in this once, and I think I might have needed like a 3mm needle, and I just ripped everything out. There are so many. Like, I have from a 1mm up until a 8mm in straight needles, double pointed needles, circular needles, and circular needles are in like 4 different lengths, and then I have 3 of each. There's so many knitting needles in this shit. Like, I'm sorry, I said it again. There's so many knitting needles. I'm gonna put it on the floor. And I inherited that. And there was really like no way turning back then. Like, I just had to knit. Put my notes away now. I can remember the rest. It's not that long ago. And it was just like, I just remember getting that basket and I was like, what do you have there? It was my parents bringing it to me and they were like, it's the knitting needles that your grandmother gave you. I was like, oh, isn't it just like 20 knitting needles? Like, I thought it was just like one of those sets where you have like interchangeable needles or something like that. And then they brought me this basket. I was like, oh, damn, that's a lot. Yeah, so it was actually terrible. Or it wasn't terrible. It's a very tragic story that had beneficial outcome for me. Just looking at the knitting needles. As I said, luckily she's still alive. She's thriving at the healthcare center. I don't want to say she's better than ever because that's obviously a lie, but she's holding up great, and that's 2 years ago now. So everything's good for her. Now, as I said, my grandmother knit a lot of socks. Like, she's a fantastic sock knitter. And she've always given us knitted socks for Christmas or for birthdays or just when we were visiting her. Basically, like, every time we saw her, there would be knitted socks. And obviously when I inherited her knitting needles, I also inherited some yarn. And in my head, the yarn looked a lot like sock yarn. And I'd never knit a sock, like, ever. And this is still in 2020. I'd not knit a sock ever. And again, I didn't understand gauge. Like, at this point, I still didn't understand gauge. I was just knitting stuff that I was able to, like, didn't really care much for gauge. And then I thought, I'm gonna knit a sock. Like, I'm gonna take this yarn that I thought was sock yarn and I'm gonna knit a sock out of it. And on the label of the yarn, it said like use 3mm needles. So I found some 3mm double pointed needles. I found a video tutorial from the Crazy Sock Lady, and I just did it. And the socks turned out great. Like, the socks were really nicely constructed. I had no weird holes at the heel turn or like the heel flap. They were really good, like, they were very nice socks. And then I put them on and they were like, I think they were probably like 5 sizes too big, not in length, but in like circumference, that's the word, circumference. Like, they were just too loose on my foot. Because obviously I had just cast on the number of stitches that the Crazy Sock Lady told me to. Like, she had this whole, like, if you're a size this, cast on this amount of stitches and just follow along, and I did. And obviously the yarn was way too thick. I then found out it was actually a cotton acrylic blend, and it was like a sport weight instead of a fingering weight. There was just a lot of things going wrong with that sock, but that really spiked my interest in sock knitting. So that was the very first pair of socks that I did, and since then, like in 2021, I think I knit, I want to say I knit probably like 25 socks, pairs of socks, obviously not just socks, but pairs of socks. And I've just recently, like, it's only been this summer that I have put my sock knitting a bit on hold, just because it's too warm to wear woolen socks anyway, and also I have a teeny tiny puppy, and the smell of wool, she's like, it's candy for her. Like, she wants to eat it. Everything that smells just a teeny tiny bit like wool, she wants to eat it. So if I put wool socks on my feet, she tries to eat my feet. I'm not about it because her teeth get stuck in the wool so easily, and then she just pulls out like a long thread, and chaos. Chaos, absolutely chaos. But yeah, and then in 2022, it's where we are. I knit socks for the first half year. I obviously knit some other things. I've knit a cardigan, I've knit some shirts and stuff like that, but primarily socks, because socks are such a like small garment, or it's not a garment, but such a small project that is actually very useful. I like projects where I can see progress easily. So I'm not about, like, for example, a cardigan. Honestly, I don't like knitting cardigans. I don't like knitting like large garments. The same with the shawl. I don't enjoy it because it's just like from start to finish, it's so long. Like it takes forever to complete, and I'm not about it. And socks, it's so nice. Like they get finished so quickly. Like I can knit a pair of socks in a few days and then on to the next. Obviously that's not very nice for my wallet because sock yarn it's not the most expensive, but you obviously need quite a bit to make some socks. And if I knit 2 pairs of socks, in a month, then it's gonna get pretty expensive in the end. But yeah, I think that's about like how I came to this very moment. So it really all started with my grandmother falling ill and me actually being given all of the opportunity to just go crazy. Like this allowed, inheriting her needles allowed me to just go into any store and purchase a lot of yarn, and I didn't really have to think about like, oh, what size needle should I use for this, because I still have all the sizes available to me. Like I have not, yes, that's lie. I purchased one circular needle by myself after inheriting these, and that was a 4mm 1.2 meters, so a very long one, because I was doing a shawl and I was getting sick and tired of it being all bunched up on my 80cm circular. So that's like the only thing I've actually purchased when it comes to knitting needles, and that's quite impressive. I know a lot of people just use like a lot of money on knitting needles and never really use any of the sizes, unfortunately. So I don't have more on my notebook now. Let's see how far we've gotten. I need 10 centimeters of ripping, and I think if I'm lucky I have probably like 4. Like I have a bit under a thumb of ripping, and I need so much more. It's gonna take me forever, but luckily it's just 1 by 1 rip, and it's gonna go by very quickly. It's gonna be great. I did I don't know what you guys call it. I call this an Italian cast off, if you can see it. I've heard some maybe call it a tubular cast on. Just basically gives this very nice like rounded edge on your knitting when you do ripping, like 1 by 1 rip, or I think you can also do it with 2 by 2 rip, but especially with 1 by 1 ripping, and I really think it looks so nice. It just makes the ribbing flow very nicely. But yeah, I don't think I have a lot more to get out of my brain. I think that was what I kind of wanted to say, and I know it hasn't been very like interesting. Like it's not the world's most interesting topics, this whole knitting journey kind of thing, but then again, I kind of really like, or I enjoy viewing them or watching them, because I feel like I get to know the person a lot more, and I feel like this is almost as if I was sitting at a cafe and maybe talking to someone while I was knitting, because I don't really do that a lot. Like I don't have a lot of knitting friends, able to go out in public, or I am able to go out in public, but I'm like I don't have a lot of friends that think it's cool that I knit while I chat with them, like speak to them, because they're all like just all stuck up on yourself, like you're busy doing everything else, you're not really listening. Well, I'm like, I really listen, like this is what I do. Like when I was at university and I was in any like class, I would always sit with her knitting, if of course it would be allowed. But I was always sitting with knitting needles and probably knitting a sock, because it keeps my hands busy. And if my hands aren't busy, I'm doing everything else. Like I'd be on my phone, I'd be on my computer, I'd do everything and I would not listen. But knitting, it occupies my hand, and then it allows my brain to actually function a lot better. And I think a lot of us can agree on that. Right, but I don't think I have a lot more, and I think I have been speaking for like too long about my knitting journey and how I ended up right at this very place in my knitting story. So I think I'm gonna stop it here. I'm obviously gonna be continued knitting. I'm not even through my coffee yet, but I'm so warm. I want to get outside and into something that is not like long jeans. It's a terrible, terrible outfit for today. But I'll put down my knitting now, and I will say thank you very much for joining me here today. And I want to say thank you once again for all of the very nice comments that you guys are leaving me. I can't describe to you how grateful I feel every time I see another comment, and also just all of the people that chose to subscribe to me. I'm just so grateful for it. It really gives me a purpose in my week. I have something to do and not just sit and stare at my dog, and I really, really enjoy that. So thank you very much. You can find me on Instagram as simplyvanilla.stitching, or you can obviously just stick with me here on YouTube, where I am talking to you very regularly. I hope you didn't mind this very nitty chatty video. Next week I am going to be out with another podcast episode with content. That is the reason why this is not a podcast video or like a regular podcast video, because there would really be no content. So next week, a whole bunch of knitting patterns and whip updates and finished objects and stuff like that. But for now, thank you very much for watching. I hope you're gonna have an amazing weekend wherever you are in this world, or whenever you're watching this. I hope you have a nice day. And I don't have anything more to say, so have a nice day, and thank you for watching.